Women Voters of Central Kane welcomes you to today's press conference. We did invite a number of legislators. 3 of them RSVP'd that they could not come, so we appreciate the responses from Senator McConaughey, Representative Anderson, and Representative Fortner. In 2015, thanks to the efforts of the League of Women Voters of Illinois and others, civic education became mandated by law in our state. The goal is that young people acquire and learn to use the skills, knowledge, and attitudes that will prepare them to be competent and responsible citizens throughout their lives. But some of the most powerful messages about civics education are embodied in the actions of our governmental leaders. Are the current leaders of this state modeling competent and responsible citizenship? What are our children learning about civics from the elected officials in Springfield? They may be learning that budgets are not a major priority and deficit spending is okay when funding programs designed to meet basic human needs like education, healthcare, human services, and public safety. They may be learning it's okay to fund these essential programs by borrowing against what the state owes the pension system. They will be learning that there are 2 ways to control this problem: by cutting spending on basic human services, or by choosing to raise revenue, which would pay off the debt and provide an adequate level of funding for programs meeting basic human needs. They'll learn that the preferred approach in Illinois has been to cut spending on programs that designed to meet basic needs. After adjusting for inflation, general fund spending on services was significantly less in fiscal year 2014 than it was in fiscal year 2000. Their textbooks will tell them that research has shown it is irresponsible to cut spending in core human services because for every dollar spent on public services, the economy gets back $1.36. Since investing in public services creates jobs for people who spend their income. Our students may be learning that governing is essentially a game of chicken. Currently, the governor and our legislators are driving on a collision course, each supporting their own budget plan. Each wants the other to change course before a budget is approved. But neither the governor's plan nor the one proposed by the legislature has any provisions to increase revenue. Now, some people are not yet feeling the impact since certain services are being funded currently. Our schools were able to open because of emergency legislation. There are a lot of questions about what's happening in January. In addition, people are receiving some money for energy assistance because the state has been ordered to hand over money from the federal government. And Medicaid services for children are being paid as a result of a court order. Unfortunately, without a budget, Illinois does not have enough revenue to pay the whole amount required by court order and state law this year. So this will add to the huge deficit. And neither the governor nor our legislators seems to be feeling the impact of the stalemate. Why not? The people who are most affected currently are the most vulnerable, those who do not have a strong voice in our state. Because Illinois has no budget, approximately 15,000 women will not receive breast and cervical cancer screening. Babies literally will not survive this budget crisis if the Governor and General Assembly fail to choose revenue, the executive director of SIDS of Illinois said. She's reporting deaths which could have been prevented if her office were staffed. The state ended funding for services that help 75,000 survivors of domestic violence in Illinois. Unless funding is restored, many people will need to choose between staying in violent homes or becoming homeless. 90% of homeless service providers in the state will need to consider denying services, laying off staff, or closing programs due to the lack of a budget. What our students should be learning when they watch Illinois' leaders is that passing a budget is an essential function of government. They must work together to meet basic needs of the citizens. Investing in public services pays back dividends to the state. So lawmakers, we call on you to do a better job of teaching civics by example to Illinois' future leaders. Now, please listen to these human service providers describe the impact of the budget impasse on our most vulnerable citizens in Kane County. First, Karen Beyer from Ecker Center.
Hello, everyone. The Ecker Center is a community mental health center, which means basically that we treat people who live in our local communities. They're living in their own homes or apartments. They may be alone, or they may be with their families. Some are able to go to school and to work, and some are not. Some are parents taking care of their kids. We at community mental health centers treat people who have serious biologically based mental illnesses, and those illnesses require medications. If our clients don't get their medications, they can't really take advantage of the other services we have to help them remain in the community. People come to us to see our psychiatrists and get medications that control the symptoms of their illness. We have daytime counselors and 24-hour crisis counseling. We have case managers that help people find resources like housing or applying for Medicaid. All of this is a lot cheaper and more effective to treat people who are living on their own in the community than to treat them in places like hospitals and jails for their mental illness. So I honestly can't figure out why the administration took away up to about 80% of all community mental health center state funding for psychiatry this year. Psychiatry is our core service. It enables people to control their symptoms so they can use all our other services that help them live in the community so they can live in the community. So, as a result of this situation, what did we do? Well, we and other community mental health centers spent what money we were able to save in years prior on psychiatry. But those funds began to run out. So we started cutting back on psychiatric services. That is a real problem because psychiatry is expensive. We are the organizations that have psychiatry for lower income people, for people with Medicaid. Most other organizations can't afford to do what we do. So when we can't provide psychiatry, there really are not enough other options for people. So, what has happened? Well, I know that admissions to our 24-hour residential crisis program have soared. Without medications, people with serious mental illness really get sick. Their symptoms flare up, hallucinations, mania, severe depression, anxiety. So what do these people do? They do what you and I do when we can't see our doctor. They go to the emergency room. That's a much more expensive option than treatment in the community. Then they might need the very expensive option of inpatient treatment. It certainly would be cheaper to prevent this by funding community mental health. So, if they don't go to the emergency room, then they may just act strangely in the community because they don't have the medications to control their symptoms. So, they get arrested, they end up in jail, a more expensive option than community care. If they're working without their medications to control symptoms, they're probably not performing well. So they lose their jobs, and they lose their housing, and they become homeless. Believe me, I really don't understand. The economics are clear. It's cheaper to treat people in the community. Why would anyone increase costs by taking away community psychiatric care? Why would they cause human suffering by taking medical care away from people who need it?
So what we could, yes. Okay. Well,
I'm going to close the door here.
what we can see is that these services are interconnected, that they all affect each other. So now let's hear from Lynn O'Shea from the Association for Individual Development.
Good morning. The Association for Individual Development has been serving the Kane County Fox Valley community for more than 50 years. We were organized in 1961 by parents of youngsters with intellectual and developmental challenges. And over the last 50 years, we've expanded to include a wide variety of supports throughout our community, last year serving more than 5,400 children and adults with a variety of different disabilities. We are extremely concerned about the failure of our government to approve a state budget and make adequate provisions to provide supports for these very vulnerable individuals in our community. We at AID suffered two major setbacks with the state budget this past year. The first and most damaging, of course, is the fact that over $900,000 in state grants weren't even offered for renewal. Over $900,000, that's almost $1 million in service cuts. And those were targeting our mental health services primarily, psychiatric care, as Karen mentioned, uninsured clients. So who are uninsured clients? Well, those are folks who make more than $14,000 a year. They're working, they're not just on disability, they're struggling along, and they can't afford to pay for insurance. They have no one to fund them. There are more and more individuals like that in our community, and we're facing a time of dwindling financial resources to provide for those individuals. So they wind up in the expensive care that Karen has talked about. The other area is affordable housing, and that is one of our larger cuts. Without housing, people end up homeless on the streets. They can do extremely well in community care, which is far less expensive. For example, our housing costs on the mental health side are about 1/10 that of what it costs to have someone served at Elgin Mental Health Center. 1/10. On the mental retardation, intellectual disability side, our costs are 20% of what it costs the state. And again, it's about $250,000 a year. Why would we want to fund our state system and not community care, which is much better quality, people are included in their community, and it's more economical for the taxpayers? Interestingly, there's a number of studies that have been done that talk about where Illinois ranks. The issues that we're confronting are not only the cuts, $1 million that the state is holding because there's no budget that someday we hopefully will see, and the $900,000 in cuts that we've sustained, but we've had a decade of neglect in terms of state funding support for our services. It's been 9 years since we've seen any kind of increase in the hourly state payment for services for people with mental health issues, and more than 8 years of any kind of increase in the hourly payment for services for people with developmental disabilities. So the erosion of base support is nearly 30% over the last decade. So we've already faced major cuts. We've had to cut staff benefits, frozen staff salaries. We've had to cut important quality initiatives, and right now, without the state's financial support in the critical areas that we needed, we are facing vacancies as they arise. So the quality of care does diminish. Our people aren't getting what they need. some of the research that has been done, talking about how Illinois ranks according to our neighbors. United Cerebral Palsy published a case for inclusion, and in 2015 published rankings about how well do we include people with disabilities in our community. And Illinois ranks 47th of the 51 states. Funding inequities, the COLA, as I taught, no increase for a decade, 30% less revenue to do what we did 15 years ago. And the Institute on Public Policy for People with Disabilities took a look at the Great Lakes region and how federal Medicaid money was spent for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And Illinois ranks dead last behind Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin, and below the average state spending. So in closing, we ask, why can't we come to a compromise? Why can't we come to a compromise to take a look at how Illinois can fund vital human services and still provide for our most vulnerable without this political controversy that is going on in Springfield?
Thank you, Lynn. I mentioned earlier about the serious cuts to domestic violence, and so Michelle Meyer will talk about what Mutual Ground has been seeing.
Thank you very much, Jean. So Mutual Ground is a not-for-profit, and we're located in Aurora. We're actually celebrating 40 years of providing education, awareness, and life-changing services for individuals, families, and the community we serve, which is Southern Kane and County. In order to fulfill our mission at Mutual Ground, we take a three-pronged approach. We look at prevention, intervention, and ongoing services for victims of these crimes. And in our prevention programs, we're in over 70 area schools talking to kids about good touch, bad touch, healthy relationships, sexual harassment, sexual abuse. And then we're also going anywhere we can to get the message out. We're going to community groups, civic groups, churches to get awareness out. In our intervention program, we have a 28-bed shelter. We have 2 crisis lines. We run 24/7. We provide support for victims in area emergency rooms, 4 of them. We provide support for victims in area courthouses, 3 of them. And then we also provide ongoing services where we do walk-in counseling and group counseling for both domestic violence victims and sexual assault victims. Not only that, we're helping their family members because domestic violence and sexual assault often doesn't affect just one person. So everything that we do is free. It's free to the victims that come to our door, call us on our hotlines for services. However, it is not free for us to provide this service. And so that's where the problem comes in. We have a $1.9 million budget at Mutual Ground, and about 36% of our funding comes from the state of Illinois. What that equates to is about $56,000 a month. So that's what we're short. One payroll at Mutual Ground is $55,000, and we do that every 2 weeks. So you do the math. It's not going to last very long. In the last 4 years, we have built up a small reserve, and that reserve money is dwindling. And I frankly don't know what's going to happen to us after the first of the year. And I just had to tell the staff that, and it was horrible to have to say. The people that are on the front lines providing service to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault have one of the hardest jobs that I can even imagine. They are working with these people, listening to these stories, helping them every single day. And now, on top of that emotional stress that they're under, they don't even have job security anymore. So what's happening is I'm losing very great, qualified, trained, experienced staff because they need to find another job where they know for sure they're going to get paid and they can keep a job because they have families too. Since the start of this budget impasse, we have cut almost everything we can cut. We're on a spending freeze. We're on a hiring freeze. We too cannot hire anybody when positions are leaving or being vacated. We just instituted pay cuts. We had to drop our employer match on our 403B for our staff. We're dealing with long waiting lists now. They just keep getting longer for domestic violence and sexual assault services. All of this with the stress of the holidays approaching. We're obviously extremely thankful to the community that has kind of wrapped around us and provided us with a lot of support. But when you're talking about getting $679,000 from the state each year, there's no possible way to fundraise for that every single year consistently so that we can make sure that our services are being covered and that the clients that are coming to our door are receiving quality services, the services that they deserve. You know, these are victims of crime, and they could be any one of us sitting at this table, any one of you, and because of that, we need to make sure they're getting the help that they need. Because then, if they don't, what's happening is they're bringing it to their jobs, the kids are bringing it to school, it's affecting the healthcare system, it's affecting everything, every single system there is, education system. So I also plead with the state of Illinois legislators and the people leading the state to come to some kind of compromise because things are getting worse. It's having a domino effect, and we work very closely with everybody at this table. And so we want to make sure that we're taking care of each other because the people that come to Hesed House are also people that come to Mutual Ground. The people that come to Mutual Ground also come to Hesed. I mean, we're all working together and we need the help desperately. So thank you.
So we've heard the concern about when will this end? At one point I heard it may not be until after the primaries in March. We may be in this for the long haul. And now let's hear from Michael Cobb. And everybody so far has been saying that homelessness is a big part of the problem here. So how is this impacting Hesed House?
Yeah, thank you. It's and to my friends, and we're all in the same boat. And homelessness is something that we all participate in collaboratively to try to bring an array of services that I think the state should be proud of the way that we work together and how to receive their funds. So Hesed House, we are in Aurora, southern part, almost to Montgomery there, and we provide services to those who are experiencing homelessness at about 1,100 or so a year. Those are unduplicated individuals. That's unfortunate. Our goal is to one day not be in business because there wouldn't be homelessness, but there is, and we're not seeing that decrease either. So on any given night, we could have upwards of 180, and now that winter is approaching, 200 plus individuals and families that will come through our door on the shelter side. And it's a low threshold shelter. Our goal and our mission is to make sure that no one freezes up under a viaduct somewhere, regardless of what situation that they're experiencing. So we reach out from that perspective with about 90 faith-based communities that come out on a regular basis, provide that level of service on the operations side. It's a great, beautiful thing to see. Some of you in this room have probably participated in that. So there's a community that says we are concerned about those that are marginalized. We're concerned about those that are less fortunate. And so we come together and we try to use our resources as wisely as possible, including those resources that we were getting from the state. Because for Hesed House, we bring those 1,100 come to us, and about every 8.5 hours, someone shows up at our door looking for some type of services, whether it's shelter or something on the prevention side. Every 8.5 hours we can do that. That's a lot of folks that are coming. And part of what's happening now is we provide roughly $75,000 or so from the state for prevention services, which we don't have. We're averaging about 50 people that are coming through our door a week that we're turning away. Well, that's going to have some consequences on the back end at some point. And so when you talk about stress for our staff, that's more stressful than anything because all of us are in this to actually serve and to represent our communities and our state and the citizens of our state. So we have that that's taking place. Also, we also know that if we want to end this thing called homelessness, then they have to have a place to go. So that's when we started talking about affordable housing. For us, we have what we call permanent supportive housing. So does AID as well. And that's where we've taken a hit. Because for many of our guests, or some of our guests, will be classified as chronic homeless. And that just means they've had repeated bouts of homelessness for extended period of time. But what it means on the housing side is it's very hard to get them housed. And what we found is that those landlords in the area, because of our reputation, they will open their doors to our guests because we continue to provide a level of permanent supportive services to make sure that when they get there, that the chances of them coming back are slim to none. Well, that's the part that has been X'd out of our budget. So we're very concerned about that, and that's in roughly $110,000–130,000. And then also the services for the prevention. Because as we come together and provide a level of comprehensive services, we believe those services that we collectively do, AID is right there on Hesse House campus, along with Joanne and the team. We work closely with Michelle, with Breaking Free in the area to provide substance abuse. We're not wasting taxpayers' money. We're actually taking it and using it for a great cause, and we have the stats to show how successful these services have been. So all of our concern right now is that for that 1,100 folks that come through the door, that 400 people that we serve a day, right now it's their lives that are being chipped away. So we're going to continue to get this message out to our state and to our community that what we do is relative and important, and it's important to every citizen of this state.
Thank you. So we've seen that it's affecting people of all ages. We had hoped that a representative from the YWCA in Elgin could come and talk about the impact on teen reach, keeping teens off the streets. But certainly at the other end of the continuum, we have Tracy Dunn from Elder Day Center in Batavia.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the elderly in Kane County. Elder Day Center has celebrated, same like a lot of us have had anniversaries this year. It's our 25th anniversary. And for 25 years, we have been providing adult day services to senior citizens in Kane County. During the time, we provide therapeutic day programming ranging from the moment somebody steps in the door through the moment they leave to go home with their families. This is just a day program, and what we offer is for senior citizens predominantly facing a form of dementia to stay in their homes and with their loved ones for as long as possible. On average, we keep a senior away from premature nursing home placement for additional 14.1 months. Depression rates decrease dramatically, as well as the slowed decline of cognitive decline, or slowed rate of cognitive decline occurs through the therapeutic programming. Depression rates decrease, anxiety rates decrease, and we fight against that isolation that so many senior citizens are facing when they're at home watching television in their recliner by themselves because they don't have anybody. So what is the state impact been having upon senior citizens? And I want to echo so much of what my colleagues are saying at this table. We have not seen a rate increase for a number of years for those kinds of services. So for every hour that we provide a state-funded client, and right now we do have about 40% of our caseload is state-funded clients, and unfortunately we are not in a position to carry the state's debt and have that increase. So unfortunately we've had to create a wait list for state-funded clients at this point. On average, every hour that a state-funded client receives, on top of what they're not paying, we are having to raise at $14 for every client. As Michelle stated, you can't fundraise against this. So we have also created a large reserve to draw upon in this situation, which we really had hoped that was going to go towards increasing therapeutic programming for our senior citizens, and we believe that they deserve that. But right now we've had to draw upon those funds to cover the state's debt at this point. Additionally, we have seen the legislature starting to propose that there had been an increase of a determination of need score, meaning that needier seniors, you have to wait a longer period of time for a senior citizen to receive community-based support. Unfortunately, what that means is that you're going to see caregivers who are going to lose wages because they're going to need to stay home with mom or dad, or you're going to see more expensive long-term care costs because they're going to be placed in a nursing home, which they may not need that level of care when community-based programming really could help a senior citizen. As I mentioned before, caregivers, we see that our mission is to keep seniors independent and to provide support for caregivers. So we have a two-pronged approach where we're trying to provide care for caregivers and support for them as they deal with keeping their loved one in their homes for longer. Studies have shown that there's billions of lost wages as a result of caring for a senior loved one. As you know, we're on that baby boomer surge where this is going to increase. So the need for services are great. And so to see the state pause or decline their proposed support for senior citizens in a time where the need is going to be greater than ever is very disappointing. And we really hope that we can garner a healthy conversation around what does this mean. These are people who have given to our communities. These are former World War II vets. We've got people who have served in various forms of government. These are teachers. These are people that are next door neighbors. These are people that have given so much to our state, and we hope that there's a way that we can, in return, provide service for them in these days where they're facing some of these mental health issues and age-related issues. So,
Thank you. So we can see that it's not a mismanagement of funds on the part of these people. They built up reserves, they intended their use for furthering the programs that they have, but now they're eating into those reserves, and once again, with the uncertainty of when this budget impasse is going to end, everything's up for grabs. So I'd like to give a large round of applause to these people. I mean, they're heroes of mine who are, Now I'd like to open it up for questions by the press first, and then anyone in the audience is welcome to ask a question as well. Go ahead.
Michelle, so you had to make an announcement to staff that you don't know what is going to happen at the beginning of the year. So are you making, is Neutral Ground making plans to close, or are you, what are you telling?
No, Neutral Ground is not making plans to close. We don't know if we may have to cut into some services that we're providing now. I mean, it's really hard for me to say because we have no idea what's going to happen. When I talk to legislators, I usually say, you know, if we're going to be cut, that's great. Let me know. That's not great, but let me know. Let me know how much we're going to be cut, so at least I can start planning for that. But it's really hard to plan when there's no end in sight. You don't know how long this is going to last. So once we get a state budget, what does that mean? Does that mean we get a state budget with the same amount we had as last year? Kind of doubting it at this point. Does it mean we're going to take 20% cut? Does it mean we're going to, let me know. Like, it's really hard. So what I did basically is I put them on notice. I said, you know, I can't guarantee you anything after the first of the year because we are going to have to make some cuts.
And you're going to have to make staff cuts in addition, then that would affect services.
Absolutely.
I want to ask a question with Tracy. How many, when you say 40% of your clients are state clients, what number is that?
right now, I believe we have 8 state-funded clients.
I'm sorry, how many?
8. We have 8. We've already had to wait list 4 since putting our temporary cap on through, I think it began October 15th. So that's 4 that have come already to our doors that we have had to part with and tell we can't do services.
Okay, so 8 clients who are state and 4 on a waiting list.
4 on a waiting list. We are also contractually obligated to provide services without pay for those clients. So that's in our contract. They're requiring that of us.
Wait. Your contract is...
Our contract, the Illinois Department on Aging states that we can put a temporary cap on our, on taking new admissions. However, we are required to continue to provide service for those already in our care. So obviously that's a debt that goes up thousands of dollars every month. We are a smaller agency. We are bare boned already. We are staffed according to what our needs are. Obviously, we make sure that the care is there. But I can't cut staff at this point because it would put our clients at risk. Our staff already works minimum wage, very, very close to. So we're dealing with, you know, we have a $400,000 budget. We're smaller. So that with other grants coming down shorter, cutting budgets, because there is more need in the community. So we're dealing with a cut as well from there.
And recognize, of course, that there are, I don't know how many other services serving the elderly in the county, but a lot of us baby boomers are indeed getting older, so.
And I feel like I want to mention too, our, another adult day center down in Southern who was on your campus, on Mutual Ground campus, has had to close their doors because they had, I believe from talking to their executive director, and I don't know much, they've had to close because their caseload was too high and they couldn't carry the burden. So we've had to acquire some of theirs as well.
So how many clients do you serve altogether?
It varies day to day. We serve up to 35 a day.
Do any of the other agencies have that same kind of clause in their contracts that you can cap how many people are coming in, but you still have to provide services even if you're not getting reimbursed?
Our contracts aren't quite that way, but I believe everybody's contract says that if the state of Illinois doesn't have money, they don't have to pay us.
And also, in order to sustain your nonprofit status, you have to pay to serve people regardless of their ability to pay. So you are in danger of losing your nonprofit certification if you start massively reducing services or eliminating services. So that's an issue. And the weakness for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities here in Kane and Kendall County and Hanover Township is over 1,500 people in the state business. They can't even get in. So in addition to having to make sacrifices on the parts of our staff, our operations, our clients are getting less service, and we have 1,500 people waiting that can't even get in. This is very sad.
The people that you're serving that you're talking about, these are people with developmental disabilities?
Intellectual and developmental disabilities, yes.
Of all ages.
Of all ages, yes. Mostly adults, of all ages. Our respite care program for children was cut. So we have families who have very little service. And it's something like 10 hours a month to get away, go shopping, have a brief break from the day-to-day stress of managing a youngster with a serious disability. And now even that small amount of money is being produced by the state and not even paid now. That's held in limbo.
I wanted to ask Michael something. When you talked about somebody coming for service every 8.5 hours, it sounds like 3 people a day. It's more than that, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and of course, that's on average, and that would include those that would show up at the shelter doors, those that would show up in our comprehensive resource center, which is right across the street, for whether it's, you know, they show up there to seek some type of preventive services and or mental health services. Any people that are sent to us, referrals that are sent to us, whether it's from Mutual Ground. So on an average, we have about every 8.5 hours, someone is seeking some services that we have.
But then you talked about having 150 people there at night and only 200 when it gets cold.
Yes.
Am I
So
misunderstanding?
in the shelters, we have what we call our pads. And so that's where our actual emergency shelter is taken place. So in that particular part of our services, our ministry, that's where we that's the emergency shelter. So on average, we have about 180 individuals that come through the door. Wintertime, of course, that goes
So,
up.
so these are two separate programs that you're
Correct.
offering, okay.
Right. So the emergency shelter, that's very low threshold. That's ground zero. That's where they come through the door. We begin to build a relationship. Once we've done that and they want to take advantage of the other services that we have so that they can overcome those barriers, that's where we have our comprehensive resource center as well as our transitional living community. That's also on site. Our transitional living communities are much higher threshold families, and it's transitional living, so that's a 6 months to about 2 years program that they have to be able to actually be out to the community.
So I had a question about Ecker Center. So the center's still providing psychiatric care, but using its reserves to fund it at this point?
We are providing psychiatric care to all the people that were with us until the beginning of last month. We are providing psychiatric care to people who are in our 24-hour crisis residential program if they are new to the agency. But we had to stop once our reserves were getting low. We had to stop serving new clients for psychiatry only. So that means the word is on the street. Last year we served 40,000 people and 40,240 people. We have walk-in intake. We have very quick appointments with our psychiatrists. So we were seeing roughly 80 people a month coming through intake, new clients. We're down to approximately 36 at this point, people coming in the door asking for services. Because the word is on the street that we can't do what we want to do.
Part of the problem, I think, too, that we're facing is that when programs are cut, it takes a long time to reinstate these. You know, it's not just going to happen overnight. As Michelle was saying, people are losing their jobs, they're finding others. Well, they're not going to be available to rehire. So it's a lot easier to cut a program than to restart it.
So Ecker Center, sorry, Karen, you're not turning away people at this point?
We are
You are turning,
who
but
need
you're still-
psychiatry,
Okay.
are really coming to us for psychiatry. We can provide other services, but this is the grant that all community mental health centers receive, that with no warning was cut this year. We had no idea this was going to happen. There was no preparation. There's no explanation of why our psychiatry funding was cut. For the Ecker Center, money that we receive from Medicaid for a psychiatric appointment pays for only 20% of the cost. So the people that have been our clients long-term that we are serving, we are paying for 80% of the cost of that psychiatric visit from our savings. And believe me, psychiatry is expensive.
And how long does the Ecker Center have, how much resources or how much in your savings do you have to go?
Well, with
Do you have
these
a
kind of
timetable?
draconian things that we've done, we should be able to survive through the year, is our goal.
Through the calendar year?
Through, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, yeah, the fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which ends when?
in July, June 30th, excuse me. Yeah, I think what we have done is very, very typical. I was talking to Jaime Garcia at Centro de Información in Elgin yesterday, and they have done exactly the same thing. We are, I think all of us, in absolute survival mode. As you said, we don't want to go out of business. We want to serve as many people as we possibly can with the resources we have. And the worst thing that could happen to the whole human service system is if any one of us would disappear. So we are struggling to remain alive and vital. It is a life and death struggle at this point.
And when you think about it, if services are cut, especially at an Army rate, then shelters like Hessen House, if you think those numbers are already high, which they are, they're going to increase. We really don't have the option of going out of business. We have to be here and help to stabilize even during this crisis. We're in receivables right now from the state. We're about $220,000. That because they didn't cut the money for our shelters, so they still help to provide some food. But because that spigot is closed, that's not coming in. And then plus the other dollars that we knew that we at least got a contract for. There are some maybe sitting at the table, they need to get that. And even our contract is how, we're not sure what the worth is at the end of the day, but we have that. So we're eating away at our reserves as well, and all of us trying to do extra fundraisers and special appeals and whatever we can do, to make sure that we can stay afloat, because we're all waiting for that January time. This is the end of the year, this is our fundraising season. We're all, hoping and praying, hey, things are gonna be strong enough so none of us have to go to our employer, the valuable folks that we have, our human resources, our staff, and say that, hey, you can no longer serve what you love. You can no longer do what you love to do here because there's not enough funds coming in from the state. So yeah, it is a challenge. I mean, and I want to commend even AID. Our partnership, part of the pass-through dollars that we get for our partnership is not there. But yet, Lynn and Joanna and her team, they have not pulled out. It speaks to, now we reduced some services, but they're hanging in there with us because we're in this thing together. And so at some point we have to be able to get back to a point where we can serve the way that we've been serving. AID is part of the Permanent Supportive Services. They're part of that team that provides services in the community for those that we already have housed. And again, they didn't pull out. So we're at some point she may come back and say, Mike, but she hadn't done that yet because we're committed to serving those who are less fortunate.
I wanted to ask, when you describe what seems to be a cascading problem, like if someone has a mental health issue and they can't get their psychiatry, their medication, they have issues becoming homeless and then needing services, or maybe they're in a bad family situation and maybe they're abused because of their mental state, and then by the time they get somewhere, it's jail or hospital or expensive or whatever. Do you have these conversations with lawmakers where you?
Yes.
Okay, so this isn't some kind of a mystery that if you don't have a service when you need it, by the time you're dire, it's way more expensive.
Preventative services are vital to keeping our community safe, healthy, and we do work all together. I know I'm out here on the senior side, which is different, but if a caregiver doesn't get what they need, they're gonna come, maybe it causes friction in the home, they're gonna come see Michelle. A job is lost, they have to come see Michael. We live in a community that's so integrated.
Well, what do they say? Because what we hear is, we're not gonna raise any taxes because why would why would the taxpayers trust us with any more money? And we have a lot of great programs, and we're just gonna have to cut some of them. But no one ever quite,
They're not painting the picture for you.
none of the, yes, the lawmakers that I've seen do presentations to the city councils do not describe what you described.
That's why we're having this press conference. It's a very serious situation.
What's their
And
response?
we will be showing a video afterwards that the league has created, which suggests for ways of raising revenue. That's what we see as one of the only, we've had over 30% cuts due to inflation and population growth since 2000. Plus, this is insult to injury this year. I mean, huge insult to injury this year. And of course, we had this huge deficit, and then when we lost the tax increase at the beginning of the year, and now all the lack of funds that these people are facing is just adding to the deficit. It's huge, and when it's this severe in Kane County, then you can imagine what it's like in some other counties in the state.
What do they say when you draw them this, because when you connect all these dots? I mean,
What they're saying to me is, some are saying, we'll go talk to Rauner, and some are saying, go talk to Madigan.
It's not my
Some are
fault.
saying it's Madigan's fault, some people are saying it's Rauner's fault, and that's all I'm hearing. Because they all understand how important these services are. But it's up, they're all telling me it's up to these two individuals. I don't know, but that's what I'm hearing.
And their meeting that was scheduled for tomorrow is now postponed. And so the uncertainty is just appalling. Any questions from the audience? We could take one more question. Yes?
I'd like to talk to Karen. Is there a suicide rate that plays into that?
Sure. There it is. We have, as I spoke to you earlier, we have a 24-hour crisis residential program, and we're full every single day for reasons like that. Yes,
Thank you.
it's very sad. Another thing that happens to people with severe mental illness, if you go without your medication for some time, when you get it back again, you've usually lost brain cells and you don't return to the same level of ability to function that you did before. So in many ways, we're killing parts of people's bodies by not allowing them to have a regular source of psychiatric medication. Mental illness at that level is a physical thing. It's like if I denied you treatment because you had cancer, I think it would be so clear to everybody that's wrong. Well, this is also a treatable physical problem. It manifests itself in behavior, but it has a physical cause that can be treated.
So fortunately, AID has been filming this. The videotape will be up on, boy, that aged me, didn't it? The video will be on YouTube. And we will be sending it to our legislators, as well as the website where you can access the film that will be played in a few minutes for anyone who's able to stay. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you so much.
Do we need to move out of the way, Doug, to show the video?